Hello and welcome to this video. In today's video, we'll be discussing about how to create a scientific calculator using Java programming language and NetBeans Swing packages. Now, this video is ideal for upcoming developers who are still learning on how to create graphical user interfaces and how to program them, and also for experienced developers who would like to refresh their knowledge on how to play around with user events. So before we start, I am going to present to you how this calculator works, and then we'll discuss the basics behind it. And after that, we shall go ahead and see how we can be able to program this particular calculator. It is my assumption that you have been able to go through our previous video on how to create a graphical user interface. If you have not, I'll leave the link to that particular video in the description of this video. Please go ahead and watch it before watching this one so that you can have an idea of how we created this particular graphical user interface, because we basically used all the packages, the controls that we can see here in these particular Swing packages. So these are buttons all the way from 7 up to where we have the equal sign. Then over here, we have a text field. You can be able to find it on these particular controls. It is right here. Then we have used two panels to separate the text field and the buttons, but you can still use one panel. It doesn't make much of a difference. These are just cosmetic issues that you can easily deal with. So if you're here for the first time, please consider subscribing to our channel and also like the video and share it with your friends so that they can also benefit from this particular video. So I'll go ahead and run this particular application so that you can be able to see it. So to run this application, I just say run file. Then we give it time to load so that we can be able to see exactly what will we be programming, how do you expect it to behave, and in this case, if you have not yet designed this interface, you can pause the video, you go and design the interface, then you can come and play the video and continue. So in this particular calculator, we have several, since Java is not just an object-oriented programming language, it's also an event-driven programming language. We have to consider the various user events that a user has to undertake in order to perform even the basic computation in a calculator. So in this case, a user is expected to select some operands and operators so that they can perform a function. So let us take an example and say the user is supposed to add two numbers. In this case, let's say the user is supposed to add 5 and 2. So the user first clicks 5, which is the first operand, then clicks a plus sign, which is the operator, then clicks 2, which is the second operand, and then clicks an equal sign, which is an operator, and gets the output, which is 7. Then you can clear the output using the AC button. Now let's say, for example, someone wants to multiply figures. Say one wants to multiply 10 multiplied by something like 5, and you get your 50. So that is how the calculator is working. So you have to consider the series of activities the user is going to do, that they must first select the operands that they want, then after that the operator, then the sequence of activities follows like that until they have a full working equation. So having said that, let us now go to the actual calculator and now try and program it. So for us to be able to program this particular calculator, I'll insist again that you must first design the interface. And when you are designing the interface, we need to set some variables here. So we'll start with this first text field that we have over here, which is basically displaying the values that we select as well as the output. So in this case, this particular field by default, it is named as JTextField1, but change its variable name and call it display, because the main purpose of the work that it does is to display the values that we have selected as well as the output that we get from our computations. Then after you change the variable name of that one to display, all these buttons we need to also change their variable name so that we can easily remember them when we are coding our program. Remember, by default, Java will always name the buttons from J button 1 all the way to the last button, but in this case, we want to be very certain which specific button are we making reference to. So you just click on the button, then right click, you go to change variable name, and then like this one, this is the button that is bearing the number 7, I have just called it BTN7 to start for button 7. Then you can do that for all the other buttons, that is all the way from 7 up to where we have 0 over here. Then now we have the operators. These operators, like the plus sign here, change its variable name, and now you name it btn add. The minus button over here, change the variable name and call it btn minus. Then we have the clear button here, change the variable name and call it btn clear. Then we have the division button here, change the variable name and call it divide. This one, change the variable name and call it btn multiply. And then finally, the equal sign or the equal button, change the variable name and call it btn equal. After you have done all that, I know it may take some time, you can pause the video and do that. Then we can now comfortably go to our code and check what we have. Now, to go to your code, you can click on source here. Just up here, you can see that we have source, design, history. So you can just click on source code and you'll be able to program. But now, since Java is an event-driven programming language, you can also come here to the specific button, right click on it, then you go to events and then say action, action performed, and it will take you to the specific button where that particular action is happening, and now you can be able to code it. But then I want us to discuss something about the source code, because we need to consider several factors when you're designing this particular calculator. We need to have some global variables that are going to handle the values that are going to be inputted as operads in that particular calculator. So we declare these four global variables here. The first one is double first num. The reason as to why we have used double is because it allows us to have the lowest as well as the highest value of a number. Then this first num will actually be storing the value of the first number to be input, or the first operand to be input in our calculator. Then we have the second num, which will store the value of the second operand to be input in our calculator. We have double answer, which will basically store the value of now the first operand, the second operand, and whatever computation is happening in them, which could be addition, multiplication, division, and so on. Then we have string operation. String operation now will be considering what operation is happening between these two operators. It will store the value of that particular operation. Remember, the operations that we have here in our calculator are addition, subtraction, and division. So after you have declared those global variables, they are global because they will be accessed by all the other parts of a program. Then you can go ahead to your button, which is button 7 here now, and here create a local variable which we are calling num1. So it says string num1 is equal to display.getText. So what this means, remember we called this particular text field that we put over here display. So you want to capture whatever is in this particular text field, which in this case, when the program runs, will always be null. There will be nothing that is displayed. And then you concatenate. This plus button here means concatenation. Since we are dealing with strings, you concatenate it with the text that is available in button 7. Now, what text is available in button 7? This is the button that we are calling button 7 if you use the variable name, and the text that it contains is actually the value 7. So after you have done that, now set the value of display, or whatever you want display to output as 7 in this case. So in this case, display will display 7. That simply means that once I run my calculator, and we can actually demonstrate that, once I run my calculator, you can see that the value is empty. There is nothing that is happening here. So once I click 7, now it will take that null value and now concatenate with the value of this particular button and now display 7 for me over there. So that is what that code is doing. You can repeat that for all the other buttons. Remember the procedure. If you come to button 8, you can just double click on it, or you say events, then you can say action, action performed, and so on. You'll be able to see this for button 8. The code is the same because remember these are local variables, that's why you're using the same name. Then you can do that for button 9. You can see button 9 here. Then we have button 4, you can see it over there. Button 5, you can see it. Button 6, we have button 1, we have button 2, we have button 3, and finally we have button 0. So that is why now we are saying that all these buttons, now we have coded them that once we click them, the value that is held by that particular button can now be displayed in our display, or we can be able to see it in the field that we have called display. Now the next thing that happens is that after a user has selected the first operand that they want to engage, then the next thing they should do is to select an operator. Now in this case, when you look at our design here, we have these operators: plus, minus, multiplication, we have division, and we also have this operator known as equal sign. So the question that we are asking ourselves is, how now do we program these operators so that a user can be able to know that actually the operator that has been selected is plus and not minus. So you come to this specific button known as plus, and then you go to events, action, action performed. So it will bring you here, and now you can write this line of code. Remember, we had created a variable, a global variable up there known as num, first num. Don't forget that we had created a global variable known as first num. I can quickly go back to that section. It is here, that variable known as first num. So let me now go back to where the code is. So we make reference to that first num, and now we assign it a value. Which value are we assigning it? We are assigning it the value that will be available in display.get. Just for purposes of you understanding, let me run this code again so that you can understand. Take an example. I have put the button 7. So initially, before 7 was there, it was clear there was nothing. But once I clicked 7, now the value of display.get text is 7 because 7 is the current value that is there. Now, what we want to do is we want this 7 that is there to be assigned to the variable known as first num. Wanted to be assigned to the variable known as first num. Remember, it could even be something like 78 or whatever the value that is available here. We want it to be assigned to the variable known as first num. So don't forget that one. That one is very important as we move along. So, but then that 7, as it is there, it is in a string format because it is a text. And we need to convert it from string to a double. That is where we are saying double.parseDouble display.get text. So this display.get text means simply capture whatever is in that particular display. It could be any value. Then after you have captured, since we want to make it as simple as possible, clear the value. Remember now, even if you clear the value, this variable known as first num has already stored the value of display. And now, after that, if you're dealing with the plus button, then we are saying the operation is the plus sign. If you're dealing with minus button, so repeat the same code for the minus button, but now when you have the operation, let it be minus. Repeat the same code for the multiply button, but where you have the operation, let it be the multiply button. Remember, in computer, this multiply button uses an asterisk. And then repeat the same for the division button, but now where you have the operation, have the division sign. You have the division sign. For the button known as clear, you just need to say display.setText null. This one clears everything and leaves the text field as null. So far so good. We have been able to see how you can be able to make a certain value that is available in this button to appear here on the display. We have also been able to see how you can be able to define the operator that is being used. And now the other remaining thing is, how do I input the second value and how do I get the output? So now in this case, what usually happens is a user will actually input the first value, select the operator, and you have seen that once you have selected the operator, the display is cleared. Then you input the second value, and once you input the second value, you click the equal sign. So all these actions are supposed to take place. Now for you to capture the second value and combine it or compute it together with the first value, the actions are supposed to take place once you click the equal sign. So you click on you go to equal sign, you go to events, then you go to action, action performed. And now here what you say, remember you had declared a variable known as answer up there as a global variable, and you had declared another variable known as second num. So what we are saying now, we have already captured the value of the first number or the first operand. Now we want to capture the value of the second operand and assigned it to this variable known as second num. So we say that the second num is equal to double.parseDouble display.get. What exactly do we mean by this? Let me run this so that you can understand it in a much easier way. Let's say, for example, we are adding 5 plus 2. So 5, as it is, it has already been displayed. Then once I click plus, the value is captured and stored in a variable known as first num. Then the display is cleared for me to input the second number. I input the second number, which is 2. So it has now been displayed. So once I click the equal sign, several things happen. The value is first captured and then input in a variable known as, or assigned to a variable known as second num. And then the next thing that happens here is that the program determines which operator have I selected or which operator have I clicked, which in this case is the equal sign, adds the two numbers and displays or outputs the answer for me here to see. Let's go back to the code now and see exactly how that is happening. So this is a place where we are capturing the second number and assigning it to a variable known as second num. Then we are saying if operation is equal to plus sign. Now remember up here we had defined our operations and we had said that so long as this button known as add is clicked, the operation is plus sign. So this is basically creating a variable known as operation and I'm assigning it a value which is a plus sign. So we come here and say if operation is equal to plus sign, then we use a control structure, open the curly brace, we say that answer, remember he had created a variable known as answer, I have also repeated it here. We say answer is equal to string.format modulus 2f comma first num plus second num. Now, if you remember, our first num, our variable known as first num, we converted it from a string to a double. And also the second num, as you can see here, we have converted it from a string to a double. Now, for Java to be able to display, you can either first add the two, then you convert them to a string. But if you want to minimize your lines of code, you can do the two operations together. You add them and then convert them to a string within the same line of code. And that is what this line of code is doing. So in this variable known as answer, it is assigning a string. And this string will basically be the value of this particular double, which is addition of first num and second num. And in this case, modulus 2f means that you want to only consider two decimal places, convert it to a string so that it can be displayed. Then you say display.setText is equal to answer. So whatever the value that is obtained here, now put it in the display. That is what our calculator is doing right here. Let us go back to the actual calculator now and have a look at it. Let's take this example. 6 is the first num. When it is here, it is in form of a string. It is now in our code, it was converted from string to double for purposes of addition. If you don't convert to double, you cannot add two strings. You can only concatenate two strings. That is a basic principle in Java variables. Then once you click the division sign or the division operator, what happens is that now 6 is taken, assigned to a variable known as first num, and then this division operator is captured as the operator that you have selected. Then if you want to divide by 2, you select the second num here. And once you select the second num, it is displayed. So once I click the equal sign, this second num is taken and assigned to a variable known as second num, or this second operator rather is taken and assigned to a variable known as second operator is assigned to a variable known as second num. And then the equal sign uses a control structure to determine which operator was used. In this case, we had clicked the division, so it takes the division operator. After taking the division operator, it divides 6 by 2 and then displays the output here. So for all the operators that we have, make sure to repeat that particular sequence of code. So this is for the plus operator. After that, here we have for the multiplication operator. And since this is a control structure, we have decided to use multiple if-else control structure. So you just start with if operation is equal to plus, then you go to else if where operation is equal to asterisk. You can see that even here, if operation is multiplication, you are taking the first number and multiply by the second number, and then you display the output. Where the operation is division, you are taking the first number, you divide by the second number, and then you display the output. Where the operation is a minus sign, you are taking the first number, you divide by the second number, and then you display the output. And having done that, of course, remember to terminate your control structure with closing curly braces, and also remember to observe the syntax of Java that every executable statement must be terminated with a semicolon so that you don't end up having syntax errors. Luckily, in this particular application that you are developing, you don't have to import any special libraries. You can just use the default libraries that are available here. All you need to remember is the sequence of flow of these lines of code. And if there's a particular line of code that you have not understood very clearly, you can easily pause the video and then you can copy the line of code. It will be able to work perfectly in your program. So that is it for this particular application. And now you have a fully working application which you can run, and once you run it, it will work perfectly. Now there's something else that I need to remind you, even from though I had mentioned it in our previous video, and this is this particular line of code that is basically used to set our application at the center. If I comment on this particular line of code, what actually happens? If I run my application now, you realize that in this case, it appears on this top left corner, but that is not a very ideal place for it to appear. So if you want it to appear in your center, by default, majority of them will be appearing on the top left corner. You can just come here and write this line of code, which is known as set location relative to null, so that your application can appear at the center. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope that it was an impactful video. Please consider subscribing to our channel and share this video with your friends so that they can also benefit. Thank you very much.